Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 54th episode of the Inbox. Starting off with a question from Johan Hagner, saying, I have a question I've asked before but I've never gotten any response to. When I move my ship, these little white dots become lines, and when I stop my ship, they become dots again, and they end up looking like stars. But the strange thing about this is they seem to be super close on cosmic scales. Is this a bug, or are they supposed to be random fireflies in space? It's not a bug, it's an intended artifact of the game. It's actually supposed to be there to give you a sense of your movement. So if you think about being in the vacuum of space, you may not have a real good idea of how you're traveling, especially if you're in something like a nebula where you don't get to see the stars for orientation. And ultimately what that's supposed to do is let you know if you're strafing to the right, strafing to the left, if you're going up or down, and if they're kind of swirling, you're doing some sort of movement. As far as whether you're going to be able to turn these off later on down the line, we don't really know. They are a work in progress right now. Some people like them, some people hate them. I kind of like them because it just gives you that feel of how your ship is moving. And when you're talking about a computer game, when you're not actually in some sort of simulation pit, you don't necessarily get, feeling or like the G-forces on your body. So it kind of simulates a little bit of that outside of just being able to feel your character leaning. Now, that character leaning is something that we just talked about in the most recent Summarize the Verse. They're trying to make it a more visceral experience when you're actually in the cockpit. So if you're in like a G-inducing event, you should feel that somehow in your character. So it may be a way of replacing what we're seeing as far as these little white dots. But again, a couple months ago, maybe almost a year ago at this point, they did an update on how they were implementing some of that. So I think it is work in progress, but it's definitely supposed to be there. Utubadar says, question, is it confirmed that player interactions with the universe is going to be truly permanent? For example, if I found an asteroid orbiting Terra and mine it out, or just flat out destroyed it, will it stay altered? I think that it should work that way. The next guy should not have the resource since it was been mined. Similarly, if war breaks out and a planet gets trashed, it should stay trashed. Is this how Star Citizen will work? Some of this we just flat out don't know, and I think some of this we can kind of make some assumptions about. As far as like war breaking out, a planet getting trashed, I think we can probably make assumptions that the NPC government is probably going to hire people to try and fix up the planet, so I don't think it's necessarily going to stay trashed forever. However, there may be some remnants, or maybe they put up a, like a memorial or something like that to kind of tributize the event. Outside of that, though, like as far as your asteroids are concerned, I think it's probably going to be that category of balancing gameplay and reality. So I think if you find a significant asteroid or even a cluster and you're doing mining in there, I think it's going to have persistence as far as how many of the resources are available. Now, once it ends up being mined out, that may be a completely useless cluster for the time being, but a new one may pop up elsewhere because there's a certain balance to where they have to say, we need to give players an ability to continue to do things. And if it's everything is, if things aren't replenishable, you end up getting to a point to where you either need the system to expand, which is a lot of work for CIG, especially when we know they want to keep things kind of closer knit, or they have to find ways to actually re-implement them into the game. So I think your cluster is probably going to end up being tapped out, at least for a while, and other people are going to have to go elsewhere to find things. But it wouldn't surprise me if at some point down the line that the same location that you were in may end up having asteroids that were able to be mined at a later time. Brad Costa says, question, I'm in the transport industry and have been for 17 years. Do you think that what I know and can do regarding routing and cost saving can be implemented in the game if I chose that role? Absolutely. I think there's a lot of things that people do in real life that are probably going to have at least some application. Economists are probably going to have an advantage as far as kind of reading the market and seeing where things are going. I think for you in the transport industry and kind of being in that logistics category, whether you're coordinating routes or whether you're determining how to load cargo ships, because a lot of people are just going to throw all the cargo on there and say, okay, now I'm going to go transport it. Well, if you think about a freelancer, the only way to really get the cargo out is through the back. And if you end up putting your first stop's cargo in the closer to the cockpit, you're going to have a hard time getting to that and offloading it. So I think some of the nuances of what you do are absolutely going to be transferable into the verse. I think it's about how you take your knowledge and what the game offers you, and you can capitalize to help yourself out as the best as possible. The question for you is going to be, do you want to do something in game that you do in real life? And that's probably going to be the harder decision for you to make. Sir Spy asks, how are we going to explore planets if everything's already been discovered? Is it possible CIG plans on making procedurally generated verse beyond the one that they're currently creating? We know they're going to continue to develop stuff, and we should expect to see more and more content coming. That being said, like planets, for example, are huge. And it's not just planets. You've got moons, you've got space stations, you've got asteroids. It's going to take a very long time for people to explore everything. And even if we get to a point to where everything has been explored, that doesn't mean it's not useful anymore. So if somebody goes to a planet and they end up finding like a mine shaft or something, they may sell that data. Well, if you end up going and finding that same mine shaft that somebody else has already discovered, it's about how you can use that. Has anybody laid claim to that? If nobody has, then you can still use that discovery either to mine it yourself or to sell that information to somebody else. Also, I think along the same line, things are always going to be changing. So on a planet, there may be, a volcanic event that changes up the composition of the ground. There may be asteroid strikes that are going to be coming in. There's a lot of different factors that I think are going to come in. And CIG, and this is, I think, what it really comes down to. CIG knows that there is a huge contingent of people that want to explore, and they said that they're very committed to making it a profitable and exciting opportunity for people. So with that in mind, they're going to have to find ways to kind of tackle this challenge. But I think the sheer scope and size of the game is going to kind of cover them for a long time. Also, there's a lot more to explore than just planets. There's going to be space anomalies and nebulas and jump points and new systems, and and that's not even just going out and exploring them and just to find them. It's what you do when you it's what you do when you actually find them. Are you analyzing the materials? Are you seeing if it's valuable? Are you going back and trying to sell that? Are you scouting and potentially finding the vandal are starting to creep up on a system? Are you alerting the military? There's a lot of different things that you can do with exploration that are going to be far more expansive than just being on planets. Now our Hajj, that's probably wrong. If I were to upgrade my ship from a freelancer to a constellation, would I still receive the Merlin or just the base ship? The constellation comes with the Merlin, so you would get the Merlin as well. And on a side note, does the Aquila come with both the Rover and the Merlin, or just one of them? Any help would be appreciated. Yeah, and it comes with both. So you get the Ursa Rover and you get the Merlin. So it doesn't matter. It's technically a separate ship. You can use it in Arena Commander. You can use it in the Persistent Universe. But at the end of the day, you actually have both of them included in your Constellation package. The only thing that stays in a package, so if you have 2-month insurance and 3,000 UEC and a freelancer in that pack, if you upgrade to a constellation, the only thing that changes in that is your ship. So the constellation will have the Ursa and it'll have the Merlin, but it's not going to see an upgrade in your insurance length, and it's not going to see an upgrade in your UEC, for example. Aardvark Lord says, hey STL, longtime viewer, I was wondering if you have any concerns about ballistic weapons being overpowered in terms of their ability to penetrate shields. While I don't have an issue with their firepower per se, being nuked in one shot because someone has quadded the things on a saber is highly irritating, especially since I fly a Kar2, which relies on shields. I don't have any concerns with it at this point, because I think I see the direction where things are going. For example, we're moving to a new flight model, and that comes with weapon balance and ship speeds and a whole bunch of other factors. Now, ballistics should be able to penetrate shields. It's one of the things that kind of gives them an advantage, considering you don't have unlimited weapons. And keep in mind, we're talking about Arena Commander for the most part. And when you're the Persistent Universe, when people are having to pay for ammo and they may be on long missions, the possibility of running out of ammo is a very big one. So, it's a pretty big downside. So if you're talking about choosing between those two, there needs to be some benefits to actually having a ballistics loadout, just because the energy weapons don't come with a lot of downside. So I think if balancing isn't done right, I think it could be a real concern. But I think they're kind of on the right track, and with 2.6 right around the corner, or by the time this is live, we may be doing content on 2.6. I think it's going to be... I think you're going to see some different changes, and they're going to continue to tweak it. And our last two questions are from patrons, starting off with Garian. Will oxygen reserves be a thing? If I fly with my mate to an asteroid belt, then leave the ship and he flies off, will I ever die of a lack of oxygen or hunger, or can I stay in this asteroid forever? I don't think you're going to necessarily die from hunger. In real life, that takes a very long time, and it's probably going to be the same in game. I think dying from oxygen, though, is a real possibility. I haven't personally seen CIG mention anything about this, but as far as like the suits that we've seen, we know there's different qualities of suits. We know there's different components on suits, so I think there's probably different oxygen reserves or maybe oxygen recyclers. I don't think you're going to be able to stay out EVA forever. I think it has to be a long enough time where you're able to do extended repairs on your ship, but I don't think it's going to be forever. And along the same lines, if they do implement something as far as like an oxygen system that provides that emergent gameplay, and emergent gameplay is something that CIG really loves to have. So as far as having somebody trying to come and rescue you really quickly or something to that effect, I think it is going to be a thing. It's just not sure as far as the implementation on it. And the final question is from Captain Crappy. Will you be affected by gravity when moving around in your ship while you're flying inside of planet's atmosphere? If you fly upside down, for example. That is a really interesting question, and I would have to assume the answer is yes, and I think that's one of the things that's actually going to provide value to ships that have additional seats. You know, for example, could you have 3 people standing in the back of a Mustang Delta? Yeah, probably, but, there's not additional seats for people, so if you're actually going to be flying through atmosphere and you turn or bank, they're probably going to be rattling around. So I think it's going to be something that's providing a depth of gameplay. You tell your buddies, hey, we're going into atmosphere. You probably want to sit down so you don't bang your head. I think it probably is going to play that way. The question's going to be how CIG actually implements the kind of the zoned instancing and the different I guess kind of not necessarily instances, but the different zones that you can be in. So, for example, when you fly from EVA into a ship and the gravity takes over and you kind of land and you can walk around, how are they going to take that and move that inside of the planet's version? So I think it's going to be a technical challenge, but I think that's probably going to be the goal, especially when you start talking about realism. Unless you've decided that you're going to lay up against a wall and the ship's going to turn really fastly, the centrifugal force is going to keep you pinned up against the wall. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be, if you're not strapped in, you're probably in for a bad time. So I would expect to see something like that happen. So that's it for this episode of The Inbox. I appreciate you guys watching. Have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.